Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Good Night Qatar, our very first edition with knockout football to discuss. My name is Adam Jenkins. The boys all around me, Oliver Platt, Jordan Wilson, and Gareth Wheeler here to break down a day with two matches. One is a little bit more one-sided than the other, but let's start with a big one that started the day at the Khalifa International Stadium. The Dutch and the Americans, the sole CONCACAF representative in the round of 16, and they started fairly well. Then the Dutch sat back, they waited, they executed their game plan, they got their goal, they got another one in added time of the first half. The Americans try to claw back, but end up losing by 3-1. So the Americans, they bow out of this tournament. And after the match, there were some spicy takes, as you might expect. Perhaps, though, none more spicy than ESPN FC's Herculez Gomez saying that Louis van Gaal ate Greg Berhalter's lunch. Oliver Platt, we know you are a Netherlands truther. Was Herc right on this?
Lunch guy as well. Loves lunch.
I love lunch. It's true. This is really my wheelhouse.
Best meal of the day.
I actually do think he's right. I've said about the Netherlands in this tournament that they didn't impress me in the group stage, and I haven't changed my opinion on that. And I don't think they play kind of the attractive football, the dominant football that you're used to seeing from Dutch teams of the past. But I have to say, in this game, I thought Louis van Gaal got it absolutely spot on. His game plan, I think, was perfect. And there were things about the way the Dutch play that I think matched up well against the United States. But you have to give them credit for a game plan that worked to perfection. I thought, the way they defended, they're like man-to-man in defense, quite deep. Make it very difficult for you to build and play. The United States struggle to find solutions to that. And the problem I have with the US sometimes is that they want to score the perfect goal. I think in that game, there was room for them to be a bit more direct, create a bit more chaos, not necessarily need to string 6 or 7 passes together in a move just to get to the penalty area. They seemed unwilling to do that. And then the other big difference maker is the US fullbacks. I think they're good going forwards, but individually, I don't think they're great defenders, and I don't think they get well protected either by the players in front of them. And you saw the Dutch wingbacks, Dumfries and Blins, just absolutely run riot against those players involved in every single goal. Dumfries is the man of the match with the goal and 2 assists. There were areas where I thought he really targeted the Americans' weaknesses, and the Dutch executed pretty much a spot-on game plan.
Herculez Gomez is partially right here, because can we just say that Christian Pulisic took Greg Berhalter's brown paper bag lunch and handed it to Louis van Gaal? Yeah. If he scores in the second minute, wide open, that ball has to be in the back of the net. It's a completely different game, right? Because the Dutch are going to have to come out and play a little bit more. Not being able to capitalize on that early chance played into Van Gaal's hands. We know how his teams play. We know that they have some top world-class defenders in this team. We know that they're really good in wide areas. And we know that they're a team that just doesn't want to come out and play. You score that early goal, everything could have turned out in a much different way. I thought the Americans played well. Ollie, you're right. Their weaknesses, the fullbacks very aggressive going forward. That left side defensively, the Fulham duo of Ream and Robinson, an absolute nightmare defensively. I call that from day number 1. Canada exposed that side of the United States when they played. This is a flawed United States team. Their midfield is excellent. I think they're going to be great going forward. McKennie not being able to play 90 minutes, it's a big problem for this team because he's such a good player for them. So yeah, I don't think Greg Berhalter necessarily made the right changes. I don't think he adapted his game plan. They went down quite quick enough. But Pulisic scores that goal. I think it's a completely different game.
I agree with you, Wheels. Netherlands and Van Gaal, the game plan today was perfection. I would say that they were tactically superior. One of the things I noticed that the Netherlands did, Gakpo and Depay, they pressed inwards. They said, you know what, Ream, Zimmerman, let you two be the guys to hurt us today. You had Ream, I counted 5 times in the first half trying to dribble forward and pick out a pass, and he's playing an orange shirt, like a Netherlands shirt, instead of trying to go deep. So in that area, tactically sound, he said, look, we are not going to have a boxing match today. We're going to have a chess match. And Netherlands were better at it. Now, this U.S. team has won me over in the terms of that they're never say die attitude. But I think they showed today that they're just a bit young and naive, especially when it comes to goals. The first one being just Adams ran his heart out the whole tournament, but just not being in the penalty spot to basically clear a ball when it gets cut back. And then obviously ball watching with Robinson and Dest on both of the goals. These areas, they just have to clean up. But we knew with this U.S. side that it was a learning tournament in a way, and this is a young squad. But these are areas they have to clean up if they're trying to be super competitive for 2026.
They played well. They did.
They did. And not only did Louis van Gaal eat Greg Berhalter's lunch, he looked better doing it in the beautiful, handsome, dapper suit, the Berhalter's t-shirt. Ugh,
actually, you're right. You're spot
Thank
on
you.
there.
Thank you very much. Speaking of absolutely right.
Edgar Davids on the bench with the shades and the suit.
Did he move?
Man,
Was he awake?
So good. So good.
Yes.
He's been like that for the past 4 games. He doesn't move.
They won and they looked good doing it, did the Dutch.
Yes.
Kristian Jack, he was there at RIN to see it with his own 2 eyes. Let's check in with KJ and get his thoughts on the match.
Same end stadium and the same minutes. Alphonso Davies was able to score in the 2nd minute here at Khalifa International Stadium. Christian Pulisic was not. As he side-footed the ball towards goal, he took a glance at the linesman and probably thought he was offside. It was the United States' biggest chance at 0-0. The Dutch would take the lead 8 minutes later, and after that, it was pretty much game over. A game that would end 3-1 for the Netherlands, but in the end, it was pretty convincing. The Americans will be very disappointed knowing that was their moment, that was their chance. The Dutch are a very difficult team to break down, and you have to get ahead of them. Once they get the lead, they're going to be a tough out here at Qatar. Virgil van Dijk, Nathan Ake, and in particular Jurrien Timber are tremendous defenders, but this was a day for Denzel Dumfries. 2 assists on the right-hand side, a goal line clearance, and then a clinical finish for the 3rd. The rightful man of the match. The Americans will be disappointed in the way that they defended in the game. Certainly coming into this match, they were the only team to not concede a goal from open play. They conceded 3, and it cost them. The Dutch will be difficult to break down in the next game, whoever they play. This is not a team that you get excited about the way that they used to be. This is not total football. They dressed it orange, albeit a different shade. It doesn't bring back memories of Cruyff and Neeskens and others, but they are efficient. Many other teams have played this way, including them in 2010, and got to a World Cup final. I'm not quite sure they're true contenders, but they could certainly go that way. It takes 4 knockout rounds to make it to get in the end to get your hands on the World Cup trophy. The Dutch will try and do that. As for the United States and all of CONCACAF, those 4 rounds, a massive uphill task going forward. In the history of this wonderful competition, CONCACAF teams have still only won 4 knockout games. Cuba did it in 1938, but took a replay over Romania. Mexico did it as hosts in 1986 over Bulgaria. The US did it in 2002, but against a CONCACAF team in Mexico. And then Costa Rica did it against statistically the worst team left in the last 16, Greece. Not exactly fantastic ringing endorsements. The challenge will now be for the United States, much like Canada and Mexico, to figure out how they're going to be better in 2026. They're already there, they're hosts, and they've got to figure out how they can get competitive games. In the end, this was a competitive game, but it was convincing as the Dutch move on to the quarterfinals.
That's right. The Dutch are through and they will take on Argentina. We will discuss a little bit more of that quarterfinal match shortly. But first, back to the Netherlands proper, their squad, and whether or not they have exceeded or met expectations. The 2 wins in the group stage, the draw with Ecuador, they get the job done against the Americans. Jordan, it seems like they have played almost exactly like the supporters would expect them to. But has your opinion changed on them in any way with this result over the United States?
It hasn't really changed. I thought they would get out the group. I thought they would do well. But I think today what I saw is how tactically sound they were. We've always known that, but just these little details that Van Gaal changed within his squad, I'm thinking that, yeah, they could do well in this tournament. Now, the team that they draw in Argentina, I just think the X factor within Messi, it's going to be a tall order. But yeah, they've gotten me to believe that they're I can never say exciting side, but at least a good side that could go far.
Ask Ollie about this. Ollie, you've crapped all over the Dutch the entire tournament. What say you now?
No, I haven't said that they're not a competitive side. I said they're a side that I don't enjoy watching, and I don't think they play attractive football, as KJ just mentioned there, anything like the Dutch teams of the past. I think we've said repeatedly they could easily be semi-finalists with the pathway they've got. We'll get to that. Not just you, Wheels. Me and Jordan said it as well.
Yeah,
we'll get to that.
Definitely did not say it. Roll the tape.
Check the tape. Please check the tape. We've said it repeatedly. Look, we'll get to that Argentina game, which I think they absolutely have a chance in. But they are difficult to beat. There's no question about that. And I don't think that's ever been in dispute. To answer the question about changing my opinion, the one thing that I think gives me more belief in them than maybe we had in the group stage is Memphis Depay's return. Like, he's made a big difference, and I think is integral to the way they play. And you could certainly see more football, at least, on the counter attack in today's game. So that's a big difference maker. But I think they are what they are. I don't think they're a team that plays great football. I don't think they'll really excite you. They are difficult to beat. Ultimately, I imagine they'll fall just a little bit short of winning the tournament, but they could be in the last four quite easily.
Really, really quickly, Memphis almost gave away 2 goals. Actually, he did lose the ball that led to the American goal and gave up what I don't trust Memphis Depay. I trust Cody Gakpo. I trust Bergwijn. I trust other players that they play in attack. I'm not sure he's the solution. The big change that Van Gaal has made since the start of the tournament, you have De Ligt and De Vrij on the bench. 2 top center backs, but putting Timber on the right side of that back line has added some speed, had some guile. He's the right fit alongside Van Dijk and Ake. That one little alteration, that one little change has kind of changed the way that they're built. And I think it makes them a much more dynamic side, at least playing out of the back as well. So the subtle change, I still think that this team has what it takes to go to make it to a World Cup semifinal. Absolutely.
To be fair, being a team that's difficult to play against and break down is a pretty good quality to have, especially when it gets into knockout football. Gareth, right back to you. Final word on the Americans. They were the last CONCACAF team standing. They did not top the qualifying group, but with this performance and everything we've seen the past really 2 years, would you say right now the Americans are the best team in CONCACAF?
They're probably the best team in CONCACAF, but I'm not going to base it on what I saw in this World Cup. I'm going to base it upon a Nations League win, a Gold Cup win. There's been sustained excellence from this emerging program. In this World Cup, I mean, they drew Wales, who were very poor, and they beat Iran by this much, like in a passionate game where Iran looked completely out of gas. I thought the U.S. were better than I expected in this tournament, and I do think that the team to beat in CONCACAF, were they head and heels better than the other CONCACAF side at this tournament? Perhaps because they got out of their group, but to me it's negligible. None of them ended up going beyond the round of 16, so it's a little bit disappointing for all 4 CONCACAF teams, to be honest with you. But based on the work before, they're probably the best side in this region.
Yeah, I agree with Wheels. Marginally better. I think obviously going the furthest, but having this young team that there's a lot of faces, nearly all of them that you'll probably see in 2026. I think they're the best team right now.
Do you know what though, Jordan? Like, they don't have a superstar like Davies and David. Like, there are a lot of really good players in that team, but Canada has those superstar. I'm sorry, Pulisic's a very good player. He's not a superstar for me. Like, who is the superstar in that team? This is the 3 midfield players, but they're more workhorses, right?
I think the edge too is just their team playing at the players that they have on their team playing at higher levels. Like, I think over time when you're getting that competition, it sharpens you for these tournaments. Like, it just brings a different beast out in a player.
Ollie, last word to you.
I think they're the best team in CONCACAF right now, but what I will say, and people don't like saying this because it sounds like you're devaluing the results that they get, but so much of a World Cup is dependent on the draw. It's a massive stroke of luck that plays a big pathway in the knockout stage, not just the group stage. It has a major impact, and theirs, I think, was relatively good, certainly compared to Canada's.
Well, for the record, I think if we were to do the entire cycle over again based on where we are right now, the Americans should win. The Canadians could win. That's sort of how I'm feeling on the region right now. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we have to talk about Lionel Messi in his 1,000th match, and also a word on my beloved Socceroos who battled until the very end but came up just a little bit short. That's next on Good Night Qatar. Welcome back to Good Night Qatar. The other knockout match today in the round of 16, heavily favorited Argentina against Australia in a historic match for Lionel Messi, who arguably had the game of his tournament thus far, despite a valiant comeback attempt and a couple of near misses for the Aussies towards the end of the match. It is Argentina who prevail. Oliver Platt, takeaways on this and takeaways on another special Messi performance.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on Argentina. Like, I want to believe that this is going to go all the way and that Messi's going to lift that World Cup. I'm just not quite sure I do. Like, Messi has been sensational. I've been impressed by the way the team has stuck together after what happened against Saudi Arabia. That I think has been something that, in the past, Argentina have fallen apart internally, played with a lot of anxiety with the weight that's on their shoulders. So there's certainly good things there. And I'm not saying they're a bad team by any stretch. I'm just not sure that they're playing at the level of some of the other teams that we've seen in this tournament. Like, Australia came really close today to getting a result from, the 90 minutes of that game, even before Argentina took the lead. That was not a straightforward game for them by any stretch. A 1-0, they changed the formation to go to a back five to try and deal with some of the threats that Australia were posing. So I think there's this narrative that's obviously there, and this feeling that it's predetermined and it's destiny that Messi's going to take this team all the way. And maybe he will, because he's absolutely incredible. But I don't know. There's still things that worry me about this team in terms of their overall performances. I'm just not sure if at some point they're going to come up against someone who exposes what are still some deficiencies in this side. I think I still wouldn't quite have them at the level I've seen of other teams, like I said.
Agreed, Ali. I think I just want to take 30 seconds to talk about Australia and the fact that
please take 3 minutes to talk about Australia, Jordan.
This was a team for me that got better and better as the tournament went on. Like, sad to see them go. We kind of knew it was inevitable, but it's not just that they sit back or they look to break. They're comfortable in grinding out a performance. And for me, a person who loves tackles and loves desire and all that, that's what this team embodied. As Australians, I'm sure they're rallying behind this team and saying, man, they put in a shift. I don't think it's every day that you're going against someone like Lionel Messi and you're trying to get the best of an Argentinian side that has so much depth. But they came out and they fought and played true to how they want to play. Now, in terms of Argentina, time and time again, they're asking Messi to come up big for them, to show this little bit of brilliance. Like, I need to talk about the goal for a second, because anyone else, 9 out of 10 players, their first touch is a touch tackle into someone else. Messi can caress the ball and say, yeah, I'm just going to pass it in the corner and be a hero and make the game 1-0. But time and time again, Argentina is going to have problems if they keep relying on Messi to save them out of these situations. Like, other players for the squad that we've talked about in other shows, I don't want to name names, but they need to step up, because at a point you're going to find a team that will punish you and kind of keep Messi at bay.
Gareth,
let's name some names. I have no problem naming. Look, I honestly think, having covered every World Cup that Messi's played in, he might be playing the best football in this World Cup that he's played in his previous at the age of 35. He is being sensational. He's the best player at this World Cup right now. So if you're looking to make a bet for golden ball, or if you did it earlier before and pick Lionel Messi, it's a great shout, because he has been that good. But you're right, too many passengers on this team. Lautaro Martinez, what's going on with this guy?
Disaster.
Like, an absolute mess. Rodrigo De Paul, completely out to lunch, completely inconsistent. And when you have a young player in Fernandez and an attacking player in McAllister in the midfield, you need some balance. There's nothing there. The fullbacks, dreadful. Like, Messi is putting his team on his back. It reminds me a little bit of 2014. Argentina won Iran 0 when it took Messi magic to beat them. That's what today's game reminded me of. And I think they're going to be really tested by the Dutch, because today Argentina was willing to give away the ball and say, you come and attack us, Australia. And they weren't willing or able to press or pressure the ball. The few times they did, it was effective. It led to the Matty Ryan mistake that led to their second goal, the inevitable game winner. They need to have that more energy. Look, there were 70 hours between games, Adam. quick turnaround, they looked absolutely gassed, like completely out of it. Full credit to Australia. This is what the World Cup's all about. Speaking about 2014, reminded me a lot of Costa Rica in 2014. Just a pain in the ass to play against, would outrun you, would outwork you. And I can't believe it. 2 key moments. The challenge by Lisandro Martinez on that wonderful run by Bench on the left-hand side. And then the save by Emi Martinez, 6 minutes, 7 minutes deep into stoppage time. Denied Australia extra time. And I think on the balance of it, they probably deserved it. So what a game. What a surprise. To me, this was the most lopsided game of the knockout round, and it ended up being very competitive. So fair warning to France or Brazil or anyone else that thinks they'll have a walk in the park in the upcoming days.
Well, Gareth got the chat started. Let's continue this when we think about Argentina moving on to take on the Dutch in the quarterfinals. What do you think of the matchup, Paula? Do you think the Dutch, with their tactical prowess and how sound they've been, can handle a very one-sided Argentina right now, or do you think the other Argentinians can step up?
Well, I think you know what you're going to get from this game, right? Which is the Dutch will approach it just like they did. Like if they approach the United States that way, they're certainly going to approach Argentina that way of sitting pretty deep, setting up to stop them, and then believing that they have threat going forwards on the break and in certain moments to cause them problems. And this, I think, is, you know, the guys have just touched on it there, but this is where the question is with Argentina is if Messi doesn't come up with something, who is going to? And, you know, particularly if you need to score more than 1 goal in a game, which I imagine they will in this one, is there enough there? So they feel reliant on him right now. Alvarez has come in and, you know, been an improvement on Martinez for sure, but he's not necessarily someone who's going to create something out of nothing. He's more of a finisher. The players around Messi creatively not producing a whole lot right now. Fernandes didn't even start the tournament. Now he's come into the midfield and he is the midfield, basically. It's him running the show. So I think this is a really difficult matchup for Argentina. I don't think they're going to enjoy the type of match this will be. And again, it could come down to, can Messi produce something special to win the game?
Well, they're certainly going to have to make the most of their days off. They do have some longer rest, having been in the first round of knockout matches, until they take the pitch again on Friday. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side of this, however, we will turn the conversation back to the Canadians and what might lie ahead between now and 2026, the next time we see Les Rouges battling in a World Cup. Stay with us. Welcome back to Good Night Qatar. It has been a couple of days since the Canadians' World Cup journey came to an end. Let's go back to Qatar and get Kristian Jack's thoughts now that he's had a day or two to process.
Canada said goodbye to each other here at Qatar 2022 on Saturday as they left camp for the final time. It was a moment of reflection, a moment of appreciation and true understanding of each other as a special moment to get together to finish off their journey here to the Qatar World Cup. In the end, it was the FIFA World Cup that they made it to. This was a special journey. The moments have come and gone to dissect their performances. We will talk about them as we go forward, but today, the story of cohesion was there once again. This is a special group of humble individuals, great character, and fantastic attitudes. In the end, we did talk a lot about what they couldn't do on the pitch, and of course, what they could do. That's why we're here in Qatar. Many different members of the media were here to report on that as well. It did not always go well back home. We have to understand, though, that many people now care about this sport. More and more people love this sport now because of what has happened here at the FIFA World Cup. Young children at school, different media members, different people around the world watching Canada. The respect for this country continues in the global game. For that, we have to thank those 26 players. This is their story. They were able to get here because of their remarkable attitudes, their humble beginnings, and of course, their fantastic talent on the pitch. Of all the years of covering professional sports, this was one of the best teams to cover. Sometimes we cover teams mainly down to the fact that it's our job. Rarely do we put our hearts into it, even though you have to put your heart into work. Sometimes you have to be neutral, for the most part, always. But with this team, it was always very different. This was a country that took me and my family in. This is a country that I learned to love very quickly. And this is a representation of that country that we should be very proud of. These players, these 26 players, will never come together again for a squad like this at a tournament. But they did it here. Yes, they lost all 3 games, and as I said, we've dissected and analyzed that. but they also made a big difference. They were able to come here and make a difference with the young players. The young players of tomorrow who have the identity now to look at these players and think what it takes to be a professional player. Many people got to know them when they're over here, and I was really pleased with the way that the media responded to that for the most part. These young men are remarkable young players, but they're even better human beings. I've got to know a lot of their family members, and they deserve a ton of respect as well. This was their identity. They're a dream team to cover and a dream team to coach. The next step, their tactical identity. What comes next? How do they have more moments in games rather than just having little bit of moments here and hoping that they can win games in the transition? That will come. I know that will come. In goal, Milan Bojan is going to be back. He said he wants to come back, and with Maxime Crepeau and Dane Sinclair, they have a lot of talented players there battling for that number 1 jersey. You could say 3 number 1s. In defense, it's concerning. They need to get more depth. They know that, and with Steven Vittoria getting to the point where he may not play for Canada for much longer, they need to find ways of replacing him. Fullbacks, I think they're fine. Alphonso Davies can play there. Sam Adekubi's been excellent. We've got Zagro Guiar who can play there. Alistair Johnston, Richie Larea had a fine tournament, and I think they've got a lot of depth. In midfield, the next step is, again, to gain control. A lot of teams here at the World Cup have gained control of games because of playing 3-man midfields or destroying teams with a number in midfield that the other team did not have. Canada set that standard in the quarterfinals of the Gold Cup against Costa Rica, where they had Osorio and Kay and Stefan Eustáquio, arguably the most important player on this squad. Eustáquio's loss here was far, far too difficult to get over. What do they do now to build around Eustáquio and Kone? How do they find a 6? Is that Liam Fraser? What about Alistair Johnston? I think he can play in midfield as well and look to be able to build that team forward as being a 6 to protect Kone and the likes of Eustáquio, Osorio, and others. Up front, we know what they've got. Track athletes, players that can beat teams in one-on-one situations regularly. No team completed more dribbles here in the group stages than Canada. They can be lethal in transition, but they can also be lethal in attack if they control games. Jonathan David is a superstar that many people picked on here at the World Cup, I think unfairly. We know what Alphonso Davies can bring, and Tajon Buchanan was the best player here for Canada at the World Cup. Kyle Larin will continue to score goals. They've got a lot of talent coming through. In the end, there's a lot to like about Canada as they all departed. They held their heads high, and it was a fantastic team to cover. That is the most important thing. You never forget how people make you feel. This Canadian team made a lot of people feel very special.
Well, thank you very much, KJ, for the reflections on what has been for Canada. And now we have to start thinking about what will be. That is the machine, the industry, that is sports. When one tournament ends, it's about what is next. And there's a lot of stops along the way. But ultimately, it's 2026 that Canadians are really going to start to care about for this men's national team. Gareth, when you think about that journey, including the very soon to come Gold Cup, do you think for John Herdman, every decision he has to make from here until now is about 2026 and then try and win some tournaments on the side? Or is it still one match, one opponent at a time, knowing that everything will progress them to that next World Cup?
It's going to be a balancing act, Adam. I think that inevitably in the back of your mind, that's what you're thinking about. But he has a good squad. He has a squad that he trusts. And I think that winning and continuing to win within this region and whatever competition they play in, it's a priority for this team to continue to grow. They need to learn how to win in difficult moments. I mean, we saw it over the course of World Cup qualifying. That was a glimpse. It was during COVID. They took full advantage of empty stadiums, playing in ice and snow and everything else. But they're still undergoing that process. I do think that there's going to be natural succession plans that are going to take place. I count 6 players in this Canada side over the age of 30. It's unlikely that all of them will be involved. Obviously, Atiba, no chance he'll be playing in the next World Cup. Same thing goes with Steven Vittoria. I'd be absolutely shocked if he's still at the right level. But the other players, Hoylett, Wotherspoon, Osorio, Borjan, are these players absolute locks for roles in this team going forward? We'll see about that. So there's going to have to be some kind of transition. They will inevitably go a little bit younger, but I don't think that you can just say, no, the older players are out and in with the new. I just don't see that being the way forward.
Oliver, pick up on that, if you will. Gareth mentioned some names that we don't expect to see in 2026. Do you want to add to that list, or perhaps think about who might not be there even for the Gold Cup?
Yeah, no, I think the list is right. The big question for me is not if a transition happens, it's when it happens, because this summer's big for Canada, right? It's Nations League finals if Canada qualifies for that, and then the Gold Cup. And before that, in terms of preparation for those two things, all you've got is the March window where you play 2 games against weaker CONCACAF opponents. So do they choose immediately after this World Cup to say goodbye, Steven Vittoria, and maybe Milan Borjan's not going to be the number 1 goalkeeper anymore, and we're going to maybe reduce the role of someone like Junior Hoylett, who's not going to be, in all likelihood, not going to be there in 2026? Or do we see them continue a bit more with a much more familiar group going into the summer tournaments, and maybe see that as the end of this cycle and try to win one of those tournaments before you then start to make that change to the younger players? That, I think, is the question John Herdman, if it's him taking this team forwards, will have to contend with, is do you start that process straight away right now? Or do you maybe wait until after the summer when you've got some real objectives in front of you to try to win big competitions in the region?
Jordan, we know age is subjective. Some people might have a different definition of old and older players, but with that general theme in mind, which older players do you not expect to see on the 2026 roster?
So I'm glad I got this question, because I want to clarify something. I think in Europe, when players are playing 28, 29, 30, 31, they're still signing great deals. Managers are looking for them to go on a squad and to be a leader and to play their best years of football. Now, in North America, we have a tendency sometimes you hit 28, 29, people are looking at you like, oh, you're old. I just want to say a few names quickly. Casemiro is 30 years old. No chance this is his last World Cup. For me, he's been the best defensive midfielder at the tournament. Griezmann is 31. Kovacic, 28. Like, these guys are, like, right now at their prime. If you want to even take the list even further, you got, like, a Modric who's 37, Perisic who's 33, Kramaric who's 31, Giroud who's 36. I didn't even know that. I thought he was, like, 33, 34. What I'm basically trying to say is that guys can still ball. It's about quality. It is not about your age. Now, I agree with Wheels about a balancing act, because that is what makes a great team. You have the 20 to 25-year-old gap that is hungry, ready to learn, and then maybe whatever you want to look at in terms of 30 to 35, whatever that age might be, but the experienced players, the guys that have played 200 caps for a club, the guys that have put it in, that know what it takes to bring into a match. So it's about getting the balance right. The thing I'll say about this Canadian side of this Canada team is that they have so many young players that also have so many caps, and that in 4 years' time will just be miles ahead. So for me, the veterans, that long-winded, the veterans that we're probably saying goodbye to, I would say it's Vittoria. And like, he's put in a shift, but outside of quality and his age, where the two come together, it might be time. Like, I don't think that's a player. I'll just say Atiba, who was an idol for me growing up. It's unlikely really to see him in 2 years' time. But I think the nucleus, the core, the Richie Lareyers, who's 27, Osorio and Laren, who they can give more. Laren's in a different conversation, but also if he's playing well in 3 years' time, I'm not saying that he should be starting every match, but I'm saying that he can contribute to the squad.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you're good enough, the age becomes irrelevant. But it also depends on what Canada's other options look like. Look, like anyone that's, nearing the age of 30 right now, Daniil Henry, Lucas Cavallini, even put Mark-Anthony Kaye in that scenario as well. Like, what are they going to be like when they're in their early to mid 30s? That's what you need to think about when it comes to the World Cup. Will they still be at that same level, or will other young Canadian players emerge who at that time will be better than them? And it kind of made a list of like a bunch of young players I'm keeping my eye on. Scott Kennedy's only 25. The only reason why he wasn't at this tournament was because he was hurt. Brim, Schaffelberg, Akinola, some players that need like another step in their career, but you're keeping an eye on. Ugbo and Miller, who are in the team, and their best days seemingly look to be ahead of them as well. Do players like Daniel Jebison commit to Canada? I think there's a real conversation there. He needs to play. Justin Smith, he needs to play. He played for the under-20s for Canada. Theo Corbeanu. I'm looking at Prizo, Marshall Ruddy, Nelson, Zuhir, Broguillard, Mateo Capagna out in Vancouver. He's 18. Can he take that next step over the next 4 years? Raposo, Jules Anthony Vilsain, Lucas Diaz, Luca Koleosho, who hasn't committed yet, Simon Collin. There's a lot of young players who are going to be part of that conversation, but it's up to those young players to make sure that they take the requisite steps, are playing at the highest level possible, and put themselves in the mix. Herdman's not here to just hand out opportunity to anyone. You have to go out and earn it in this side because there are very good players that you need to take over.
I agree with you on that, Wills, and I don't think anyone should be handed an opportunity. But I do also think at the same time that there is an element with Canada, maybe that's not the case with stronger, more established national teams, that Herdman sometimes has to invest in players at a younger age. And maybe push them forwards a little bit more than they've actually achieved in their club career. And I think you can see that in players on this roster, right? Like Alistair Johnston, Kamal Miller, even Ismail Kone. And there's no question now that Kone deserves to be getting on the pitch and getting minutes. But initially, early on, he played a month or something of professional football. But Herdman sees a really talented player, someone he likes, puts him in his squad. And I think sometimes getting that national team exposure, both from a competitive level and also an attention level from, potentially other clubs looking at you and things like that, can advance the careers of these players. So I think at the same time, there will probably be a few individuals that Herdman looks at and says, maybe they're not quite there yet, but if we get them in our group and in our camps, we can help push them to the level we need them to be 2 or 3 years down the line.
And the joy of having so much time between now and when the 3 North American nations host the World Cup, there's going to be names that we haven't even heard of yet that might surprise and find their way into red. So it's going to be a lot of speculating and list making, but hey, it makes for a good conversation. We'll take another break. When we come back, we will discuss tomorrow's round of 16 matches with England and Senegal and France and Poland. We'll get the guys' takes on those fixtures when we come back. Good night, Qatar, with Gareth, Ollie, and Jordan. A look ahead now to tomorrow's round of 16 matches. We have to start with Ollie. If it's coming home, my friend, they have to win 4 matches. How are you feeling ahead of the knockouts and Senegal?
I feel quietly confident, I think. Like, there's part of me that thinks with this England team that they could beat anyone and they could also lose to anyone in this knockout stage. So I'm not quite sure what to expect, but there are some reasons for optimism and positivity that I lean on. Like, I think the centre-back partnership of Maguire and Stones has held up a lot better than people expected. Jude Bellingham, I think, is a legitimate difference maker in this competition compared to past competitions. That man right there, Marcus Rashford, is banging form right now. And we have options in terms of goal scoring that it's falling a lot less, I think, on Harry Kane than it has done in the past. There's genuine threats from multiple different positions. And then you also look at the European Championship knockout stage. Like, until England scored in the final against Italy and decided to try and survive with a 1-0 lead, it was pretty impressive. Like, they took care of Germany and Ukraine, no issue, went behind against Denmark and then totally dominated that game. Like, that was the best knockout stage I've seen England play in my lifetime. So there are reasons for optimism you lean on, but I don't think it's going to be an easy game against a Senegal team that will put up plenty of resistance.
Playing at Wembley kind of helps that.
Oliver's first wee slip, by the way. I hope you all caught that.
Sorry.
First
I call Canada wee as well. So
that is true. You are allowed to do both. Let's go to Gareth and ask you, what should scare Oliver Platt and English supporters about the Senegalese team?
History, the way England played.
Gareth Southgate, maybe.
In games like this, Gareth Southgate. Does he pick the right 11? Honestly, this Senegal team is going to make England's life miserable, and the longer they go without scoring, the more that pressure is going to be turned up. Senegal's been there, done that before, winning the African Cup of Nations against Senegal or against Egypt, and then having to go home and away against Egypt just to qualify for the World Cup. This team knows what it takes to win in difficult moments like this. Now, no Sadio Mane. Their midfield is a little bit decimated. Idrissa Gueye is out through suspension. Cheikh Kouyaté is out as well through injury. So it's going to be a real challenge, but England needs to play, get out of second gear and play with tempo here. So I think that means playing Phil Foden and Marcus Rashford from the start. If they do play from the start, I do actually like England's chances.
Don't worry, though, Gareth. You know Southgate is going to bench both of them and go back to how he started the tournament. It's inevitable. Jordan, we come to you.
When he loses.
We come to Jordan Wilson when we need a word on Poland because he is the resident Poland apologist. When we think about their fixture coming up, what has to be...
Apologist.
God. Let's move on from that. What has to be the game plan for the Poles to get a result against France, J-Dubs?
First of all, that's class, Wheels. That is sheer class.
What a show. Well, what a week. That's it.
I heard Poland's manager, Miknevich, in the press conference today saying that they need to get in and around the box and help Lewandowski. And I said, wow, really? You need to get, instead of playing this 9 back and 1 up attack, they need to start getting bodies for it. Now, look, this is a tall order for Poland, right? But I hope they can change this 9 back and 1 up formation and play a little bit of a 4-5-1 and just see what you can create. Try to get numbers forward. Like, I'm looking at this Polish side. There is some quality, like especially in the midfield and attack. You're obviously playing against a French side that can hurt you, but just go out and play with some vim and vigor, some gusto. Do not sit behind the ball. Try to create something. Now, what happens is there are more opportunities like set plays or free kicks that you're just going to inevitably get when you start to attack, right? I'm like, if you're going to lose, at least go out swinging. So for this Poland side, I agree with their manager. They need to get in and around the box and stop playing in their half.
You almost think, well, I almost think that I would take Australia over Argentina than I would the Poles over the French. Ollie, do you think there's a game plan here? Like, what do you think? Do you think there's a realistic shot that Poland can get by France?
Well, I think Jordan's right. Like, they've got to show more ambition than they have in previous games. If there's something you can lean on, it's that Szczesny's been the best goalkeeper in the tournament, so maybe you get a heroic performance from him. France are yet to keep a clean sheet at this tournament, so they're not exactly, completely impenetrable in defense. But yeah, you're clutching at straws, really, I think, to see anything other than a French victory in this game. I just think, even making that comparison to Argentina, like, I see France when they go up against teams that sit deep and try and defend in that low block, there is far more threat in terms of how they're going to solve those problems and break you down. They have 2, really genuinely top-class players on either wing in Dembele and Mbappe. Griezmann, for me, as good as any kind of playmaking, attacking midfielder at the tournament so far. So I find it hard to see past the French in this game, but maybe if Szczesny stands on his head and they get Lewandowski a bit more support, they can put the cat amongst the pigeons, and there's something there for them.
I was so ready to smoothly go to break. I was not expecting cat against the pigeon. Dear God. Okay, well, we're going to take that break. And when we come back, tasteful or disgraceful, that lead-in was disgraceful from Ollie. Good night, Qatar, when we return. This is Good Night Qatar, and I think I've finally been able to get a word out of my mouth since recovering from Cat Against the Pigeons. This is a segment we like to call Amongst Again. Just when I thought I was back on the rails. Tasteful or disgraceful is the name of this segment. I'm going to ask each of the guys whether this nation or blank nation's exit from the World Cup was tasteful or disgraceful. We'll go to Jordan Wilson first. The USA falling by 3-1 against the Dutch. Was that tasteful or disgraceful?
It was tasteful. It was tasteful. I think that they got a lot of people behind them this tournament, myself included. I said they had no identity before, and they played with heart, man. And for that, I commend them. It was tasteful.
Oliver Platt.
Yeah, tasteful, I think, as well. I think they ran out of gas towards the end, and that was something we saw with the States in qualifying, was they sometimes struggled towards the end of those 3-game windows. But overall, plenty of positives to take. I think they wanted to show that the United States could play football in a different way, and they largely did that.
Gareth Wheeler.
I'm going to go disgraceful. And it doesn't have anything to do with their play on the field. It's off the field. And as much as I'm going to miss the very creative USA, USA chant, I will not miss the It's Called Soccer campaign. Yeah. How obnoxious is that?
So
holding up signs. It's so lame. Stop trying to tell other people what to call the game. They can call it whatever they want. It's like the refusal to use the metric system and sticking with Fahrenheit. It's insanity. That It's Called Soccer campaign, absolutely disgraceful.
Yes, absolutely. Good riddance to that. Going to come to Oliver Platt for the next one. And everyone understand there is only one answer to this next question. Australia's exit, tasteful or disgraceful?
Very tasteful, like an Australian barbecue on a hot summer's afternoon. Look, you can't ask for much more out of a team than what Australia gave, right? When you look at the level their players are playing at, the squad that they had to choose from, they got every inch that they could have out of their team, more than I think any other side at this World Cup. So well done to them.
Gareth.
They're the best partying fans at any World Cup. Tasteful. They get goals scored by a guy named Duke, a guy named
Mitch
Lucky,
Duke.
and OG. I mean, it sounds like a band from the 70s. Tasteful.
Jordan Wilson.
Tasteful. And I'll say tasteful like my grandma's apple pie. Like, tasteful, man. They play with so much heart, and they got better as the tournament grew on. They just faced the giants in Argentina and Lionel Messi, and it's honestly tough luck at the end of the day.
We will always have Mitch Duke, ladies and gentlemen. The next one, it could be tasteful, it could be disgraceful, on pitch versus off pitch. But Gareth Wheeler, there was some controversy around Uruguay as they exited.
How do I say tasteful? I know that Suarez likes a good nibble, but I got to go disgraceful here. Just it has nothing to do with the antics after the way they went out. It's like this team should have been advancing. They weren't playing progressive attacking football, and Diego Alonso got it all wrong. They needed goals in that last game, and they played for the 2-0 win instead of thinking about adding more goals. And that's exactly what they needed. The way they went out, absolutely disgraceful.
Ollie.
There were some scenes at the ends that can probably only be described as disgraceful, but I'm going to say tasteful. I know everyone hates Uruguay, everyone hates Luis Suarez, and maybe on the latter front with some justification, but I think this has been a great team over the years. Like at previous World Cups, okay, it didn't happen for them this time, but Suarez, whatever you think of him, has been one of the best players of his generation. Cavani is an unbelievable striker as well. They just weren't at the level they previously were, and they didn't have enough players around them to kind of make up for that loss. So personally, I think Uruguay is right up there for me among one of the most special footballing nations, and they've had a pretty remarkable run with this team.
Yeah, I agree with all that, but this tournament, the way they played, Godin, Jimenez, Caceres, like I love these players, but just not good enough this tournament.
Jordan?
Disgraceful. For me, I'm not even going to talk about the way they left. I'm going to talk about how it took them so long to try to get it right. Going to the World Cup, they had so many superstars, big players on the team that weren't playing for any type of system. It was just like Suarez or Nunez just trying to figure it out. But like, to me, of the same type of player, that's the time where you have to go and say, hey, this is my role. This is your role. This is what we need to do to get into the next round. For them not to go there, disgraceful.
And then Alonso was blaming the penalty against Portugal for the reason why they stop it. Just go home.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me add, we've had this conversation before. Stop crowding the referee. Like, were they going to go up, take the elevator to the VAR room and go after a 57th minute?
Too, Nunez.
Yeah. Listen, we understand there's passion in this sport, but come on, be a little bit more common sense there. Jordan, Mexico ruffled a lot of feathers, especially back home with their exit in the group stage. What did you make of their departure? Tasteful or disgraceful?
Yeah, tasteful. It was unlucky, man. I feel like it's weird because a similar thing I was just giving Uruguay a crap for is that they didn't really figure it out. Mexico just couldn't score. But like the way they played, like it always had me thinking like, oh, they could do it and go far. But I'm gonna give them tasteful. They gave it all they could. They just couldn't score and scored far too late in the tournament.
Ollie?
I'm going disgraceful. I think they stuck with the old guard for too long with this team when they had other guys that, you know, at this point in their careers are going to give them more. And I to be honest, I'm a little concerned about this Mexico team going forward. So I don't see, you know, a ton of players that I'm really excited about coming through. There are some direct replacements, at least in the starting 11, who I think will maintain a good level. But I don't know that there's a ton to be really excited about with this team over the next few years.
Yeah, tasteful. My expectations were set lower. The run of 7 straight getting out of the group came to an end. All good runs come to an end. And they went out with a bang. Like, it's incredible they only scored twice against Saudi Arabia. They had 26 shots, 11 on target. Like, they threw everything at them. That Chavez goal was an absolute rocket from a set piece. Yeah, they'll have some regrets, but they came this close. Tasteful.
Absolutely have to go quick here, but Hansi Flick and Germany are out, Gareth. Tasteful or disgraceful?
Disgraceful just because of the way they defended. Look, they had the exact same results as Spain, but you need defenders. What happened to all the great German defenders? Disgraceful.
Ollie, quick.
Tasteful.
Tasteful. Oh, okay. Okay, I see what you did there. Jordan?
Because he's happy they're out.
Disgraceful. Come on, Germany. Like, you have to get out of the group, especially that group. And you got 4 goals scored against you. Disgraceful. Come on.
This
man.
show, always tasteful, absolutely never disgraceful. Jordan Wilson, Gareth Wheeler, Oliver Platt, Adam Jenkins, thanks for joining us on Good Night Qatar.